The sun poured soft golden light through the tall windows of Steer House Nursing and Rehabilitation Center in Providence, Rhode Island. The days here moved slowly, gently, as though time itself respected the fragility of the lives within these walls. It was a place of both care and quiet endings. The residents of Steer House were people in the final chapters of their stories, many elderly, some with terminal illnesses, others living with advanced dementia. For them, this center provided comfort and dignity in their remaining days. Among the doctors and nurses, there was another, more unusual member of the staff. A cat. His name was Oscar. Oscar wasn't a particularly large or striking cat. His fur was a simple patchwork of gray and white, his eyes a soft, unassuming green. He had arrived at Steer House as a kitten, part of a program that allowed pets to roam freely and bring companionship to the residents. At first, no one paid him much mind. He was like any other cat, curious, sometimes aloof, occasionally curling up on a warm windowsill or stretching lazily in a patch of sunlight. But in the quiet corners of the center, something remarkable was beginning to happen. Oscar had developed a habit of wandering the corridors, moving from room to room. The nurses noticed him early on, weaving between wheelchairs and walkers, pausing to sniff at a doorway before continuing on his way. If a patient reached out to pet him, he would sometimes oblige with a gentle rub against their hand. Other times, he would simply sit nearby, his tail flicking slowly back and forth as if he were observing, waiting. "Look at Oscar," Nurse Emily would say with a soft smile. Always on his rounds. The staff thought it endearing. The residents loved him. They called him our little guardian. But no one suspected that Oscar was more than just a comforting presence. Not yet. One chilly autumn morning, as leaves danced in the breeze outside, Nurse Emily wheeled a frail woman named Mrs. Parker into the sunlit common room. The older woman had been declining for weeks, her body growing weaker with each passing day. Oscar sat on the windowsill, watching. As Nurse Emily adjusted Mrs. Parker's blanket, the cat leaped down with surprising grace and padded silently across the room. Without hesitation, he climbed onto Mrs. Parker's lap and settled there, curling his tail neatly around his paws. "Well, look at you," Emily chuckled, her heart warming at the sight. "You've chosen Mrs. Parker today?" Oscar didn't move. He simply closed his eyes and began to purr, a deep, steady rumble that vibrated through the room like a low hum of comfort. Emily thought little of it. Until the next morning. Mrs. Parker passed away peacefully in her sleep that night. The nurses, saddened but unsurprised by her decline, went about their duties with quiet respect. But then, a few days later, it happened again. Oscar climbed onto the bed of another patient, Mr. Harrison, a former music teacher with a bright smile that had begun to fade. Oscar nestled beside him, his body pressed close as though offering silent companionship. By sunrise, Mr. Harrison was gone. At first, the staff dismissed it as coincidence. Cats were intuitive creatures after all. Perhaps Oscar simply sought out warmth and comfort, drawn to patients who were still and quiet. But as weeks passed, the pattern became undeniable. Whenever a patient was near the end of life, Oscar would appear. He would slip into their room, hop onto their bed, and remain by their side until their final breath. Not once did he falter. Not once did he choose the wrong room. Word spread quickly among the staff. "Did you see Oscar in room 12? One nurse whispered to another. "Yes," came the reply, a shadow of concern in her eyes. "We should prepare." Doctors, too, began to take notice. Dr. David Dosa, a geriatrician at the center, started keeping informal notes about Oscar's behavior. He tracked the cat's visits and the outcomes that followed. What he discovered astonished him. Oscar's accuracy was startling. In dozens of cases, his quiet vigil marked the final hours of a resident's life with eerie precision. No medical equipment could predict so reliably. No human instinct came close. Oscar had become Steer House's unlikely harbinger of farewell. Yet, in a strange and beautiful way, his presence brought comfort. Families who had been called to the bedside of their loved ones found solace in Oscar's gentle companionship. He became a symbol of peace in the storm, a quiet acknowledgement of life's final journey. When words failed, when grief threatened to overwhelm, Oscar was there, purring softly, offering a sense of calm amidst the inevitable. "It's as if he's helping them cross over," Nurse Emily once whispered to Dr. Dosa as they watched Oscar keep watch over a patient in her final hours. Dr. Dosa nodded slowly, the weight of understanding settling in his chest. "Maybe," he replied, "in his own way he is." Of course, not everyone accepted Oscar's gift without discomfort. Some visitors recoiled at the sight of the cat curled beside their loved ones, their fear of what it signified clouding their appreciation for his quiet grace. But for many, Oscar became more than just a cat. He became a guide. A silent guardian. A small, living reminder that even in life's final moments we are never truly alone. As autumn deepened and the days grew shorter, the legend of Oscar began to extend beyond the walls of Steer House. Visitors spoke of him in hushed, reverent tones. Journalists heard whispers of the extraordinary feline, and curiosity swirled. Soon, eyes from around the world would turn toward the unassuming cat in the care home of Providence, eager to understand the mystery he carried in his gentle paws. But for Oscar, there was no mystery. There was only his duty. And in the quiet of Steer House, as the sun set beyond the horizon, Oscar rose once more from his windowsill perch and padded silently down the corridor, searching for the next soul in need of his quiet company. The corridors of Steer House were never quiet for long. There was always the soft murmur of nurses at their stations, the faint rustle of bed sheets as patients were tended to, the gentle clinking of medicine carts rolling over tiled floors. But lately there was something else. A buzz. A quiet ripple of something larger than the walls of the care center could contain. Oscar. Word of his strange, unsettling gift had begun to seep beyond the halls of Steer House, carried first by whispered conversations and then by voices full of awe and disbelief. Visitors left the center with stories of the little cat who seemed to know the unknowable. He was there, right beside my father's bed, one woman told her sister after a tearful farewell. He didn't leave him. Not for a moment. I thought it was just coincidence, another admitted, shaking her head. But I saw it with my own eyes. He came to my mother's room that night. And by morning, she left the rest unsaid. The pattern was undeniable. Among the staff, there was growing respect and something close to reverence for the quiet feline. Oscar had become more than a pet, more than a comforting presence in the halls. He was a signal, a living omen, a watchful companion in the final moments of life. No longer did the nurses see him simply as a charming addition to the home. Now, when they saw Oscar slip silently into a patient's room and settle at the bedside, they would exchange knowing glances. They would move swiftly to call family members, to notify loved ones that time was drawing short. He gives us a chance, Nurse Emily said softly one morning as she stood in the doorway of a room where Oscar kept vigil. A chance to say goodbye. Her colleague, Nurse Victor, nodded, his eyes thoughtful. He helps them not be alone. It was Dr. David Dosa, the soft-spoken geriatrician at Steer House, who first decided to document the phenomenon in earnest. His notes, once casual and curious, became meticulous records. He tracked Oscar's visits, the timing, the patterns. He observed how the cat would wander through the corridors during the day, sometimes resting in sunbeams, other times ignoring rooms altogether. But when the final hours of life approached, Oscar would move with quiet certainty to the bedside of the dying. Dr. Dosa, though trained in science and reason, found himself humbled by the little cat's instinct. He knew there were theories, of course. Some speculated that Oscar could detect biochemical changes in the human body, the scent of cellular decay, the subtle shifts in pheromones that signaled the body's impending shutdown. Others believed it was an extraordinary sensitivity to changes in behavior, the slowing breath, the stillness that came in life's final hours. But none of these explanations felt complete. Oscar's actions were too precise, too timely. And always there was the feeling that he was not simply observing, but offering comfort. Maybe it's not about how he knows, Dr. Dosa mused aloud one day. Maybe it's about why he cares. The story might have remained a quiet legend within the walls of Steer House, a whispered marvel shared among staff and families. But then, in 2007, Dr. Dosa decided to share his observations with the world. He wrote an essay for the prestigious New England Journal of Medicine simply titled A Day in the Life of Oscar the Cat. In it, he described the remarkable accuracy of Oscar's vigils, the solace he brought to patients and families alike. And with that, Oscar's story exploded into global consciousness. News outlets across the world picked up the tale. Cat predicts death, screamed one headline. Meet Oscar, the feline angel of mercy, read another. Television crews camped outside Steer House, eager to catch a glimpse of the prophetic feline. Journalists from every continent requested interviews with Dr. Dosa and the nursing staff. Is it real? They asked. Does the cat truly know? The answer, given with quiet conviction, was always the same. Yes. Inside Steer House, life continued as always. Patients came and went. Families visited, bringing flowers and laughter to brighten the rooms. Nurses moved through their routines with practiced grace. And Oscar, unaffected by the global attention, went about his quiet work. He cared nothing for cameras or headlines. His focus remained solely on the people in his care. When a patient neared their final hours, Oscar was there. He would climb onto the bed with practiced ease, curling into a small, warm ball of fur beside their frail form. His presence seemed to ease their breathing, to slow their restlessness. Family members found comfort in his vigil. "He stayed with my father until the very end," one woman told a reporter, her eyes glistening with tears. "It felt like he was watching over him when we couldn't be there every moment." In a place often filled with fear of the unknown, Oscar became a gentle guide, a silent reassurance that no one would pass from this world unnoticed or unloved. There were skeptics, of course. There always are. Some dismissed the story as coincidence or clever editing by an eager media. Others suggested that Oscar was simply drawn to warm beds or quiet rooms. But those who had witnessed him firsthand knew the truth. They saw the way he lingered when life hung by a thread. They felt the weight of his presence in those final moments, a small but powerful force of companionship in the face of the inevitable. And more than that, they saw what he gave to the living. Time. Time to hold a hand, to whisper final words, to say goodbye with love instead of regret. Oscar's legend grew beyond anyone's expectations. He was featured on news programs, in magazines, even in scientific discussions about animal perception and human mortality. Books were written about him. Documentaries explored the mystery of his abilities. And through it all, Oscar remained the same humble, quiet guardian he had always been. At Steer House, he was given an official title, Companion Animal. His framed certificate hung proudly in the hallway alongside a small brass plaque that read, "In gratitude to Oscar for his companionship and comfort to our residents and their families." For the staff and families, Oscar's greatest gift was not in his predictions. It was in the way he reminded them that death, while inevitable, need not be lonely. That in our final moments, there is still space for grace. Still room for compassion. Still time for love. One evening, as the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the floors of Steer House, Oscar climbed onto the bed of an elderly man whose family had not yet arrived. The man's breath was shallow, his eyes half closed. Oscar settled beside him, his steady purr filling the quiet room. Minutes later, the man's daughter burst into the room, tears streaming down her face. She rushed to her father's side, taking his hand in hers. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice cracking. Her eyes found Oscar's, and in them she saw not fear, but comfort. She saw understanding. She saw love. As the day faded into night, Oscar remained at his post, unwavering. And when the man's final breath slipped away, it did so in the presence of his daughter's love and the quiet vigil of a humble cat who understood, somehow, when comfort was needed most. Years passed at Steer House, and with them countless sunrises and sunsets spilled their soft light across the center's aging walls. Seasons came and went, yet within those steady rhythms, one presence remained constant. Oscar. His fur, once sleek with the energy of youth, had softened with time, touched by specks of silver. His movements were slower now, measured not by urgency but by quiet understanding. He had long since grown accustomed to the quiet gazes of visitors, the warm nods of nurses, the way family members instinctively smiled, even through tears, when they saw him enter a room. For them, he was not just a cat. He was a companion in the hardest hours. A small, living bridge between the known and the unknown. A gentle guardian who had witnessed more last breaths than any doctor or nurse within these walls. Outside the center, the world continued to marvel at Oscar's gift. Articles were published, books written, documentaries filmed. His name became a symbol far beyond the ivy-covered facade of Steer House. Children drew pictures of the amazing cat for school projects. Medical conferences dedicated time to discussing the mystery of his abilities. Could animals sense the end before humans could? Is it instinct, chemistry, or something we cannot yet explain? Debates flourished in scientific circles. Some researchers pointed to studies on dogs detecting cancer, or the ability of animals to sense seizures before they happen. They speculated that Oscar was simply more attuned than most, capable of detecting subtle chemical markers in the air or changes in human behavior invisible to others. Others dared to wonder if there was something deeper, something that defied logic and nestled closer to the realm of the spiritual. But for the people at Steer House, explanations hardly mattered. What mattered was the comfort Oscar brought to patients and their families, the way his silent vigil softened the sharp edges of fear, how his small heartbeat beside theirs offered a final kindness in a world too often afraid of endings. Among the staff, Oscar was treated with gentle respect. His favorite spots were known by all: the windowsill bathed in morning light, the old rocking chair in the sunroom, the corner of the nurse's station where he could observe the flow of life and care. Nurses left small treats for him along their rounds. Volunteers brushed his fur, whispering kind words as they did. "Thank you, Oscar," they often said, stroking his aging back. "Thank you for being here." And Oscar, as always, responded not with words, but with presence, with quiet companionship, with unwavering loyalty. Stories continued to emerge from within the care center. One night, as storm clouds gathered outside, a man named Mr. Jensen, a former sailor whose stories of the sea had once filled the halls with laughter, grew quiet in his final hours. His daughter sat at his bedside, holding his weathered hand, tears slipping down her cheeks. As thunder rumbled distantly, Oscar appeared in the doorway. Without hesitation, he leapt onto the bed, curling against the old sailor's side. His purring, soft but steady, filled the room with a strange, calming warmth. The daughter, surprised at first, soon found comfort in the cat's presence. "He's not alone," she whispered, brushing her fingers through Oscar's fur. When morning came, her father was gone, but her heart carried a small ember of peace. A gift, she felt, from the quiet guardian who had stayed by their side. Oscar's presence even changed the way Steerhouse approached its mission. Inspired by the lessons of their feline companion, the staff deepened their focus on not just medical care, but emotional connection, on treating the end of life not as a clinical event, but as a passage deserving of dignity, presence, and love. "We learned from him," said Nurse Emily, reflecting on years spent alongside Oscar. "He reminded us that sometimes all you need is to be there. No words, no answers, just presence." Her words were echoed by many who had come to see death not with fear, but with a measure of acceptance. Oscar had taught them that, as Oscar grew older, the staff at Steerhouse cherished every day with him. He had long since become more than a phenomenon. He was family. In his quieter moments, Oscar would sit by the large windows and watch the play of light on the floor. Some said he seemed to be remembering, as though each sunbeam carried memories of the lives he had touched. And perhaps, in his way, he did. Perhaps, in the quiet rhythm of his heart, there pulsed the echoes of 1,000 goodbyes, of hands held, tears shed, and souls gently escorted to their final rest. When the day finally came for Oscar himself to make his own journey, it was a day filled with both sorrow and gratitude. He passed away peacefully, surrounded not by fear, but by the warmth of those he had comforted for so many years. Candles were lit in his memory. Flowers were placed beside his favorite windowsill. Staff and families alike gathered to share stories of the little cat who had given so much, who had walked beside so many at the end of their paths. A small plaque was placed in his honor at Steerhouse. "In loving memory of Oscar, our faithful guardian, our comfort in final hours. You taught us that no one leaves this life alone." Oscar's legacy continued long after his passing. Medical students learned about him in lectures on palliative care. Families who had known his gentle presence spoke of him to their children and grandchildren, passing along the story of the cat who cared when it mattered most. And at Steerhouse, his spirit lived on in every act of kindness, every moment of quiet companionship, every recognition that even at the end, life holds beauty and grace. For Oscar had shown them, not with words but with love, that sometimes the simplest acts can mean the most. A warm body beside you, a steady heartbeat, presence that says you are not alone, never alone.